The moment I heard the breathing coming from inside the sealed rear compartment, I knew my life was about to change forever. The salvage yard shouldn't have had a Bentley flying spur. Not here. Not in this graveyard of rust and shattered glass where cars came to die. The fog rolled thick between the stacked vehicles, turning everything into shadows and whispers. But that black luxury sedan gleamed like a diamond in a pile of coal. I was looking for parts, a side mirror for Mrs. Alvarez's Toyota. Maybe some copper wiring I could sell. 24 and broke, with a dance studio hemorrhaging money and rent due in 5 days. The salvage yard was my secret, the place I came when the bills piled higher than my pride could handle. But this car didn't belong. The windows were tinted dark, darker than legal. No license plates. The paint job was immaculate, not a scratch or dent visible even in the weak afternoon light filtering through the mist. I circled it slowly, my sneakers silent on the mud-slicked ground. Every instinct screaming at me to walk away. That's when I heard it. Faint, rhythmic, desperate. Asterisk, thump, 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 asterisk. The sound came from the rear cargo compartment. My hand froze on the cold metal. The thumping continued, weaker now, like whatever was inside was running out of strength. Or time. Hello? My voice cracked in the silence. The thumping stopped. Then started again. Frantic, urgent. I checked over my shoulder. The fog had thickened, turning the yard into a maze of half-visible wrecks. Somewhere in the distance, old Polly was probably sleeping in his shack by the entrance like he did every afternoon. I was alone. The compartment was locked, but the Bentley's rear seat had a release mechanism. I knew because I'd watched enough crime shows during the long nights when insomnia kept me company. My fingers found the edge of the seat, pulled, and the cushion came forward. That's when the smell hit me. Copper and fear, sweat, and something darker. Through the gap, I saw him. A man, maybe 30, bound with zip ties that had cut deep enough to paint his wrists red. Duct tape covered his mouth, but his eyes, God, his eyes were wild, pleading, fighting between consciousness and the edge of something permanent. He'd been bleeding. The white dress shirt was soaked through, the blood dark and widespread across his torso. Hours old, maybe. Long enough to mean serious damage. I grabbed my phone. No signal. Of course not. The salvage yard sat in a dead zone, surrounded by scrap metal that turned it into a Faraday cage. I'm going to get you out, I whispered, my hands already working at the tape across his mouth. Stay with me. His skin was cold, too cold. When the tape came free, he gasped, the sound wet and rattling in his chest. They're coming back, he managed, each word costing him. They're voices. Male. Multiple. Cutting through the fog like knives through silk. The man's eyes locked on mine, and in them I saw something worse than fear. I saw certainty. The certainty that we were both about to die. The voices were getting closer, and I had maybe 30 seconds to make a choice that would define everything that came after. Run, and leave him to whatever waited in that fog. Or stay, and face it together. I didn't run. My hands moved on instinct, pulling the man further through the gap between the seats. He groaned, the sound scraping raw against his throat, but he helped as much as his broken body allowed. The voices were closer now, 40 feet, maybe less. The fog distorted everything, made distance impossible to judge. Can you move? I whispered. Barely. His accent was slight, polished. Not what I expected from someone left to die in a sealed compartment. You need to leave. Now. They see you. You're dead. Shut up and crawl. 3 cars over sat a gutted van, its interior stripped clean but the frame intact. I half-dragged, half-guided him toward it, my arms screaming as his weight threatened to pull us both down. Blood left a trail across the mud. No time to cover it. No time for anything except reaching that van before the voices found their shape in the fog. We made it with seconds to spare. I pushed him into the cargo area, climbed in after, and pressed us both against the far wall where shadows pooled deepest. His breathing was labored, wet. Punctured lung, maybe. Internal bleeding, definitely. He needed a hospital 10 minutes ago. The voices crystallized into 3 men. I watched through a rust-eaten hole in the van's side panel as they emerged from the mist like specters. Dark suits, expensive shoes caked with salvage yard mud. The one in front carried himself like he owned the world, or at least this piece of it. I told you to wait for my call before dumping him. His voice was smooth, controlled, dangerous in its calmness. Boss said make it disappear. The second man shifted nervously. The Bentley's clean. No one comes out here except the old drunk. Clearly someone does. They'd found the disturbed compartment, the displaced seat. I felt the man beside me tense, his hand moving slowly inside his jacket. Even dying, he was reaching for a weapon. I caught his wrist. Shook my head. 3 against 1.5 wasn't odds worth taking, not when silence might save us both. Fan out. Check every vehicle within 50 yards. The leader's command cut through the fog. Whoever opened that compartment is either very stupid or very unlucky. Either way, they don't leave this yard breathing. My heart hammered against my ribs. The man beside me had gone still, his eyes locked on mine. Up close, I could see the damage better. The split lip, the swelling around his left eye, the way he held his ribs like they might fall apart. But it was his eyes that caught me, clear, calculating, even through the pain. These were eyes that had seen worse and survived. Daniel Park, he breathed, so quiet I almost missed it. That's the name you'll need. I had no intention of needing anything from him. Survival meant disappearing, and I was excellent at that. The searchers moved methodically, their footsteps sucking at mud. One passed within 6 feet of our van, his shadow cutting across the rust holes. I didn't breathe, didn't move, became part of the wreckage. Minutes stretched like hours. Finally, the leader called them back. Polly still passed out drunk. No fresh tracks at the gate. Whoever it was probably ran. A pause. Torch the Bentley. Burn the whole section if you have to. No evidence. They left, their voices fading back into the fog. I waited another 5 minutes, counting my heartbeats, before I moved. Daniel Park was unconscious, his head lolled against the van wall. His pulse was thready but present. I had the water bottle I'd brought for myself, still half full. I wet his lips, forced a small amount between them. He coughed, sputtered back to awareness. "You're still here." Something like surprise flickered across his face. Still stupid, apparently. I loosened the zip ties enough to restore circulation without freeing his hands completely. Trust wasn't on the menu yet. "Those men work for you?" "Worked." Past tense. His laugh turned into a cough that brought up blood. The one in charge was my accountant. Funny how money changes loyalty. I pulled out my phone. Still no signal. But I had something better. A portable hotspot I'd bought for emergencies, buried in my backpack. It took precious seconds to boot up. But when it connected, I had enough bandwidth for what I needed. Anonymous tip through a VPN routed 3 times. Coordinates, condition of victim, urgent medical needed. No name, no trace back to me. I'd learned these tricks living on edges sharp enough to cut. Ambulance coming. I'm leaving. Wait. His hand shot out, faster than someone that injured should move, catching my wrist. "Who are you?" I should have lied. Should have given him nothing. But something in his eyes, maybe the recognition that we'd both just survived something that should have killed us, made me careless. "Someone who doesn't exist," I said, "and you'll keep it that way." I left him the water bottle. Left him propped against the van wall where the paramedics would find him. Left him alive, which was more than his accountant had intended. But I also left something else. Something deliberate. Pressed into the mud beside him was a single dance shoe keychain, small and silver, the kind they sold at every dance supply store in the city. Except mine had a modification, a tiny scratch on the heel. 3 parallel lines I'd made myself years ago. If Daniel Park was the kind of man I suspected, he'd notice, he'd wonder. And eventually he'd understand it was a message. "I see you, I saved you, and I'm not afraid of what you are." The fog swallowed me whole as sirens began their distant wail. The drop-in center's common room television buzzed with static, its volume cranked too high by residents who'd lost their hearing to age and the streets. I sat in the back corner with yesterday's newspaper, pretending to read, actually watching the exits. I wasn't a resident. I taught a free class here twice a week, and used their Wi-Fi when my studio's bill got shut off. Old habits from a life I'd supposedly left behind. That's when his face filled the screen. Breaking news. Feared Korean organized crime figure found critically wounded in West Side salvage yard. Daniel Park, alleged head of the Park Syndicate, was discovered by paramedics following an anonymous tip. My coffee went cold in my hands. The newsreader continued over footage of the salvage yard cordoned with crime scene tape, police and federal agents swarming like ants. Park, known to authorities but never successfully prosecuted, has alleged connections to money laundering, extortion, and I stopped hearing the words. On screen, they were loading a gurney into an ambulance, surrounded by men in dark suits who moved with military precision. Even unconscious, even barely alive, Daniel Park commanded an army. What the hell had I done? That's the bastard who controls Eastside. Old Tommy settled beside me, his breath reeking of cheap vodka and cheaper cigarettes. My nephew tried working for him once. Came back different. Quiet. Scared. He shook his head. They say Park's got cops, judges, half the city council in his pocket. Untouchable. They also say he's dying, I pointed out, keeping my voice neutral. Men like that don't die. They multiply. The broadcast shifted to a press conference. A woman in a severe suit stood behind a podium bearing the FBI seal. We're investigating this incident as an attempted assassination, likely connected to ongoing territorial disputes within organized crime networks. We're seeking any witnesses who may have been in the vicinity. Her words were drowned out by my pulse, hammering in my ears. Witnesses? They were looking for witnesses. Looking for me. I left the drop-in center through the kitchen exit, the one that dumped into an alley the staff pretended not to know about. 3 blocks away, I ducked into a library and claimed a computer station in the back. The news was worse than I'd imagined. Daniel Park wasn't just connected to organized crime, he was an empire unto himself. Korean-American, 32. Took over his father's operations at 25 and tripled their reach within 3 years. Legitimate businesses fronting for money laundering. Political donations that ensured favorable treatment. A reputation for cold efficiency that kept rivals terrified and subordinates loyal, until someone inside decided loyalty was negotiable. I dug deeper, following threads into forums and encrypted chat rooms where people discussed the Park Syndicate in hushed digital whispers. The prevailing theory was a power struggle, an inside job designed to look like a rival organization's hit. Names floated: lieutenants, accountants, soldiers who might have reason to want Daniel Park dead. But one detail caught my attention, buried in a crime blogger's speculation. Sources suggest Park was taken from his private residence, held for approximately 18 hours before being dumped. Location of holding unknown. If Park survives, the retaliation will be biblical. 18 hours, tortured for information, then left to die when they'd gotten what they wanted. Or hadn't. I remembered his eyes in that van, the calculation behind the pain. Whatever they'd done to him, Daniel Park hadn't broken. The question was, what had I broken by saving him? Meanwhile, across the city in a hospital secured like a fortress, Daniel Park opened his eyes. The ceiling was white, pristine. Medical equipment beeped steady rhythms. His chest was bandaged, his wrists dressed where the zip ties had cut deep. An IV fed clear liquid into his veins. He was alive. Someone would pay for that surprise. Boss. Jinsu materialized beside the bed, his second-in-command's face carefully neutral. The doctors say you're lucky to be breathing. Luck had nothing to do with it. Daniel's voice came out rough, damaged. Status. Your father's flying in from Seoul. The family's locked down. All operations suspended until we identify the leak. FBI's crawling up our ass, but the lawyers are handling it. Jinsu paused. We found the Bentley, burned, but forensics is going over what's left. The woman. Daniel's memory of her was fragmented, pain blurred, but certain details stood crystalline. Dark hair, mid-20s, moved like she knew how to disappear. She saved me. Security footage from the salvage yard gate shows nothing. Old drunk who runs it was passed out, conveniently. No civilian vehicles entered or left in the relevant time frame. She walked in, probably looking for parts or scrap to sell. Daniel shifted, ignoring the sharp protest from his ribs. Find her. Boss, there's no trail. Whoever she is, she's a ghost. Then find the ghost. Daniel's eyes hardened. And Jinsu? The person who orchestrated this, the one who signed off on leaving me in that compartment, is someone I trusted. Someone close enough to know my schedule, my security, my weaknesses. I want every financial record audited, every communication traced, every loyalty tested. Already underway. We've isolated 3 possibles, all being watched. Make it 4. Check Marcus Kim, my accountant. Jinsu's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. Marcus has been with the family for 8 years. Your father personally vetted him. My father's in Seoul. I'm here, bleeding in a hospital bed because someone close decided I was disposable. Daniel's hand found the call button, pressed for morphine he wouldn't take. Trust nothing. verify everything, and find that woman before Marcus does. Why would Marcus? Because she's a witness, and witnesses are loose ends. Daniel closed his eyes, but sleep was impossible. There was something else. She left something beside me. Small, silver. Did the paramedics catalog it? Jinsu checked his tablet. Dance shoe keychain. Bagged as evidence. Currently with our people instead of the FBI. Cheap. Mass-produced. Sold in hundreds of stores citywide. Let me see it. The keychain arrived within the hour, sealed in plastic. Daniel studied it through the clear bag, his mind working through pain and medication. Mass-produced. Yes. Common. Certainly. But there were 3 parallel scratches on the heel, deliberate marks that turned a common object into something unique. A signature. A message. She'd wanted him to find it. Wanted him to know she'd left it intentionally. Run this through every database we have access to. Dance studios, supply stores, anyone who might customize these. And check the homeless networks, the shelters, the street markets. She moved like someone who knows how to survive on the margins. That's half the city, boss. Then search half the city. Daniel's gaze never left the keychain. She saved my life. That means she knows what I am and chose to help anyway. That makes her either brave, stupid, or incredibly dangerous. Which one worries you? All 3. Daniel pressed the morphine button this time, felt the drug beginning its soft invasion. Because anyone desperate enough, or skilled enough to pull me from that compartment and disappear without a trace, is someone I need to understand. Before my enemies find her first. As consciousness faded, his last thought was of her eyes in the fog. Calm, determined, unafraid. He'd built an empire on understanding people, on reading their fears and exploiting their weaknesses. But in those brief moments in the van, he'd seen something in her he couldn't categorize, something that felt dangerously like recognition. And Daniel Park had learned long ago that the most dangerous weapons were always the ones you didn't see coming. 3 days later, Daniel had his first lead. The image was grainy, pulled from a traffic camera 2 blocks from the salvage yard, time-stamped 40 minutes before the anonymous 911 call. The woman's face was partially obscured by a hood, but the angle was enough. Jinsu's tech team enhanced, clarified, built a composite. She was younger than he'd thought. 24, maybe 25. Strong bone structure, eyes that held the camera with accidental defiance. But it was her left forearm, exposed as she adjusted her backpack, that made Daniel lean forward despite his stitches' protest. A scar. Distinctive, deliberate. 3 parallel lines, exact mirrors of the scratches on the keychain. That's not random, he said. Jinsu nodded. Our analyst agrees. Scarification, likely self-inflicted or from a specific trauma. The pattern's too precise to be accidental. Cross-reference it. Medical records, emergency room visits, anything. Already tried. She's not in any medical database we can access. Ran her face through every system. Criminal, social services, DMV, passport records. Nothing. She's either using a false identity or she's been scrubbed. Daniel's mind worked through possibilities. Witness protection? Unlikely they'd have better discipline. Foreign national? Possible, but her speech pattern had been pure American, probably Northeast regional dialect. Someone who'd deliberately erased themselves? That fit better. The keychain, he said. Where did the search on that lead? 14 dance supply stores sold that model in the past 2 years. We've got surveillance footage from 8 of them. Working on the others. But boss, even if we find her buying it, that doesn't tell us where she is now. Daniel studied the scar again. 3 lines, parallel, identical to the mark she'd left on the keychain. A signature, yes, but also something deeper. A pattern that resonated in his memory, scratching at consciousness like a forgotten dream. He'd seen that mark before. Not recently, but somewhere in his past. The certainty of it was maddening. The scar pattern, he said slowly. Run it through our old files. Family records, my father's associates, anyone connected to the organization in the last 15 years. That's thousands of entries. Do it! Daniel's tone left no room for negotiation. And pull sealed records, juvenile files, expunged cases, anything that might have been buried. Jinsu's expression shifted. Boss, accessing sealed juvenile records without a warrant is... I'm aware of the legal boundaries I'm asking you to cross. Daniel met his second's eyes. Someone tried to kill me. And the only person who intervened is a woman who doesn't exist in any system we can access. That alone is suspicious enough to warrant investigation. Either she's incredibly unlucky to be in that salvage yard, or she's part of something larger. You think she's connected to whoever set you up? I think coincidences are statistical anomalies that usually aren't. Daniel shifted, swallowing against the pain the movement caused. But I also think if she wanted me dead, she had ample opportunity. She saved me, then vanished. The keychain was a message. The scar is a signature. Both are breadcrumbs from someone who wants to be found, but on her terms, not ours. The investigation intensified. Jinsu deployed the Park Syndicate's considerable resources, hackers who danced through firewalls, lawyers who knew which judges to pressure, contacts in every agency that kept records. The search expanded from databases to human intelligence, from digital trails to analog whispers. It took 4 more days to find the sealed file. The name had been redacted, blacked out so thoroughly that even the Syndicate's best couldn't recover it digitally. But the case number led to a juvenile court record from 12 years ago. And buried in the case notes, alongside social worker observations and court-ordered psychological evaluations, was a single photograph. A 12-year-old girl, dark hair, defiant eyes, and on her left forearm, clearly visible in the documentation photo, 3 parallel scars. Daniel stared at the image on Jinsu's tablet, his world tilting on an axis he'd thought was fixed. "Find her name," he said quietly. "The file's sealed by court order. Juvenile protections mean find her name." It took another day, trading favors Daniel would normally never consider, calling in debts that cost him leverage he'd spent years accumulating. But the Syndicate had reach, and reach could access anything given enough pressure. The social worker who'd handled the case was retired, living quietly in Florida. She didn't want to talk. Jinsu made it clear refusing wasn't an option. The conversation happened over encrypted channels, audio only, the old woman's voice shaking with anger and fear. "That file's sealed for a reason," she said. "That child went through hell. She deserves privacy. She's in danger now," Daniel lied smoothly. "I'm trying to protect her." A bitter laugh. "Men like you don't protect. You consume. Then help me find her before someone worse does." Silence stretched. Then, Nia. Her name was Nia Carter. Smart kid. Resilient as hell despite everything. The system failed her, but she survived. Last I heard, she'd aged out, disappeared into the city. I always hoped she found peace. The call ended. Daniel sat in the darkness of his hospital room, the name rolling through his mind like thunder. Nia Carter. The scar pattern finally clicked into place. 12 years ago, his father had handled a situation, a business associate, who'd gotten sloppy, abused his family, drew the wrong kind of attention. Daniel had been 20, learning the business, kept at arm's length from the messy details. But he remembered fragments. A mother who'd tried to run, a daughter who'd witnessed something she shouldn't have. The Park Syndicate had cleaned it up, made problems disappear, paid the right people to ensure certain details never surfaced. If Nia Carter was that daughter, then she hadn't randomly found him in that salvage yard. The 3 scars weren't just a signature. They were a mark of what his family's organization had touched, twisted, broken. She'd saved his life knowing exactly who he was, knowing what he represented. The question that kept him awake through medication and pain was simple and terrifying. Had she saved him out of mercy? Or was this part of a revenge plot so patient and calculated that even he hadn't seen it coming? "Find her," he told Jinsu the next morning, but quietly. "I want surveillance, not contact. And I want to know everything about her life, where she lives, what she does, who she associates with, everything. And if she's connected to the people who tried to kill you." Daniel touched his bandaged ribs, remembering her hands in the fog, the genuine urgency in her voice. "I'm going to get you out. Stay with me." "Then she's a better actor than anyone I've ever known," he said. "And that would make her the most dangerous person in this city." The search for Nia Carter began in earnest. And with it, the countdown to a confrontation that would redefine every assumption Daniel Park had ever made about loyalty, revenge, and the girl who disappeared into the fog with his life in her hands. They found her in 10 days. Not in a shelter or on the streets, but teaching a kid's hip-hop class in a converted warehouse studio that barely deserved the name. The building leaned, the mirrors were cracked, and the sound system sputtered, but the 15 children moving through counts didn't seem to notice. Neither did Nia. Daniel watched from the surveillance footage first, studying her the way he'd study an opponent. She moved with the controlled precision of someone who'd trained seriously, probably classically, before life had taken those opportunities away. Her corrections to students were firm but encouraging. She smiled more here than she had in that foggy salvage yard. This was who she became when she wasn't saving crime lords from their own organizations. She runs the studio, Jinsu reported. Barely. Behind on rent. Utilities shut off twice in the past 4 months. Takes payment in cash when parents can afford it. Teaches free when they can't. Lives in an apartment upstairs that's probably violating 6 housing codes. Family? None listed. No close associates we can identify. She keeps to herself, works odd jobs when she needs fast cash, disappears into the city like smoke when she's not teaching. The sealed file. What else did you find? Jinsu hesitated. Boss, are you sure you want to? Tell me. Her mother tried to leave an abusive situation 12 years ago. Your father's organization was asked to facilitate the disappearance by the abuser, a business associate whose name I'm guessing you'll recognize. Instead of helping the mother, we made sure she couldn't testify, couldn't run. She died 6 months later. Nia went into the foster system, bounced between homes until she aged out. The scars are from that night, the night her mother tried to run. The weight of it settled over Daniel like ash. His father's business, his family's choices, the empire he'd inherited, had been built on decisions like these, justifications and rationalizations that added up to a 12-year-old girl losing everything. And that girl had saved his life anyway. I'm going in person, he said. That's unwise. You're barely healed, and we still haven't identified everyone involved in your attempted assassination. Leaving the safe house is not a request, Jinsu. The studio was empty when Daniel arrived, his driver and 2 bodyguards waiting in the SUV outside. Evening had fallen, turning the warehouse district into pools of shadow between failing streetlights. He climbed the exterior stairs to the 2nd floor, his ribs protesting every step, and knocked. Nia opened the door with a kitchen knife in her hand. I wondered how long it would take, she said. Up close, without fog and adrenaline, she was even younger than the surveillance suggested. But her eyes held an age that had nothing to do with years. She didn't look surprised. She looked tired. Can I come in? She stepped aside without lowering the knife. Her apartment was exactly what he'd expected. 1 room divided by curtains, a kitchenette that was more concept than function, furniture salvaged from curbs and thrift stores. But it was clean, organized, maintained with the pride of someone who'd learned to make something from nothing. I should have left you in that compartment, she said, closing the door. Probably. Daniel remained standing. Sitting would show weakness, and they both knew this conversation ran on power dynamics. But you didn't. Moment of stupidity. Won't happen again. I wanted to thank you, and to offer compensation for what you did. Nia laughed, the sound sharp and humorless. Compensation. That's a polite word for a bribe. Call it what you want. I'm offering money. Enough to save this studio. Pay your rent for the next year. Give you breathing room to actually build something sustainable. In exchange for what? My silence? My complicity? In exchange for nothing. Daniel met her eyes. You saved my life. That deserves recognition. Your life. Nia set the knife down on the counter, her movements controlled. Daniel Park's life. The man whose organization destroyed my mother, made sure I had nothing, disappeared our entire existence like we were inconvenient paperwork. So she knew. Had known from the moment she opened that compartment, maybe even before. The keychain hadn't been a signature. It had been a calling card. A way of ensuring he'd dig deep enough to find the connection. I can't change what my father's organization did, Daniel said carefully. I can only control what I do now. Then what you do now is leave. Take your money, your guilt, your compensation, and get out of my life. Her voice remained steady, but anger burned beneath it. I didn't save you to cash in. I saved you because leaving someone to die, even you, wasn't something I could live with. That doesn't make us even. That doesn't make us anything. What if I offered something else? Daniel shifted tactics. Not money, resources, protection. You're living on the edge here. 1 bad month from losing everything again. Let me provide security, stability. You can't buy me. I'm not trying to buy you. I'm trying to help. Help. Nia's laugh was bitter. Men like you don't help. You invest. You leverage. You turn everything into an asset or a liability. I'm not interested in being either. Daniel felt the conversation slipping away. He'd expected resistance, but not this absolute rejection. Most people had a price, a pressure point, something he could use to establish leverage. Nia Carter was refusing to engage with the transaction entirely. "What do you want?" he asked bluntly. "For you to leave. I don't believe that's all." Nia studied him, her expression unreadable. "You want to help? Fine. There's a woman named Maria, lives in the shelter on 5th. 3 kids, running from an abusive ex who has connections with local cops. She needs safe passage out of state, new identities, the kind of disappearance your organization probably specializes in. That's it? That's everything. You make Maria and her kids disappear safely. No strings, no debts, no leverage over them later. Do that, and we're done. You can tell yourself your debt is paid." It was a test, Daniel realized. She was offering him a chance to prove his help wasn't just self-serving manipulation, and if he refused or used it to gain leverage over her, she'd have confirmation that every assumption she'd made about him was correct. "I'll handle it personally," he said. "Maria and her children will disappear safely. No conditions, no obligations. Then we have nothing more to discuss." Daniel moved toward the door, paused with his hand on the knob. "For what it's worth, I am sorry. For what was done to your mother. To you. I can't undo it, but I acknowledge it. Acknowledgement doesn't resurrect the dead, Mr. Park." He left, descended the stairs to where his men waited. As the SUV pulled away, Daniel looked back once. Nia stood in her window, a silhouette against weak light, watching him go with the same unreadable expression. "Boss." Jinsu's voice came through the car's speakers. "We have movement." The surveillance team picked up a black SUV, no plates, circling the warehouse district. "They're trying to track it now." Daniel's blood went cold. "Get a team back to that studio. Now, already deployed. But boss, they're not going to make it in time. The SUV's pulling up to her building right now." On the surveillance feed streaming to Daniel's phone, he watched 3 men exit the vehicle, professional, armed, moving with purpose toward the stairs he'd descended 2 minutes ago. Nia Carter had saved his life. And now, because of that choice, someone was coming to ensure she couldn't repeat the favor. "Turn around," Daniel told his driver. "Now." Nia heard the footsteps on the exterior stairs and knew immediately they weren't right. Too heavy, too synchronized, too deliberate, the knife she'd set down went back in her hand. The window that led to the fire escape, barely code-compliant and rusted to hell, suddenly became the most important architectural feature in her apartment. She moved fast, killing the lights, grabbing the go-bag she kept packed out of habit. Old survival instincts from foster care and worse kicked in like muscle memory. The knock came, polite, professional. "Miss Carter? We need to speak with you about an incident." Wrong. Everything about it was wrong. Real cops would have called first, would have had badges visible through the peephole. These men wanted her to open the door believing they were legitimate. Nia went out the window instead. The fire escape groaned under her weight, rust flaking off into the darkness. Below, the alley was 15 feet of shadow and broken glass. Behind her, the apartment door splintered inward. No more pretense of legitimacy. She jumped. The landing jarred through her ankles, her knees, but she rolled with it and came up running. Behind her, shouts. The fire escape creaked as heavy bodies descended too fast for safety. The warehouse district was a maze if you knew it. Nia knew it. She'd scavenged here, taught dance workshops in abandoned loading docks, learned every cut-through and dead end during the months when she'd been homeless and needed escape routes. She took 3 turns in rapid succession, vaulted a chain-link fence, cut through a building whose back door had been broken for years. The men followed, professional but unfamiliar with the terrain. She was gaining distance, until headlights cut across her path. The black SUV had circled around, anticipated her escape route. Someone driving knew the district almost as well as she did, or they had her movements mapped in real time. Nia changed direction, sprinted toward the one place in the district she knew would have cameras, witnesses, people. The late-night convenience store 3 blocks over stayed open until midnight, catered to warehouse workers and people who needed to disappear into crowds. She made it 2 blocks before the second SUV appeared. They'd boxed her in. Professional. Coordinated. This wasn't a random grab, this was a planned extraction. "Nia Carter." The voice came from behind her. She turned, knife up, to face the man from the fire escape. Older, maybe 50. Expensive suit under a tactical jacket. "We can do this easy or hard. Either way, you're coming with us. Who sent you?" "People who don't like loose ends." He gestured, and the other 2 men spread out, cutting off her remaining exits. You saw something you shouldn't have. Saved someone you shouldn't have saved. Now you get to answer questions about both. Nia's mind raced. 3 men, all armed, judging by the bulk under their jackets. Her knife was laughable against those odds. Running had hit a dead end. Fighting would last about 10 seconds. That's when the third SUV arrived. It came in fast, no headlights, and stopped at an angle that blocked the first vehicle's escape. Doors opened. Jinsu emerged with 4 men, all armed openly now. No pretense. That woman's under park protection, Jinsu said calmly. Walk away or don't. Your choice. The older man's expression flickered calculation, weighing odds. This doesn't concern the Park Syndicate. She saved Daniel Park's life. That makes it very much our concern. A standoff. 8 men, 2 groups, Nia caught in the middle with a kitchen knife and a go bag. The math was simple. Whoever won this confrontation wasn't planning to leave witnesses. Jinsu, she said quietly. I didn't ask for rescue. Boss did. I follow orders. The older man's hand moved toward his jacket. That's when Daniel Park stepped from the SUV, his movement stiff from barely healed injuries, but his presence absolute. Marcus sent you, Daniel said. It wasn't a question. The flicker in the older man's eyes confirmed it. Marcus doesn't give orders in my organization, Daniel continued. Not anymore. So you're working for whoever bought him, which means you're going to tell me who that is, or Jinsu's men are going to ensure this conversation gets much more unpleasant. We're just contractors, Park. We don't know who signs the checks. Then you're useless. Daniel's tone went flat. Jinsu. What happened next was faster than Nia could track. Jinsu's men moved. The contractors moved. And suddenly the warehouse district erupted into violence that was professional and terrifying in its efficiency. Nia dropped flat, rolled toward the nearest cover, a dumpster that smelled like death but provided metal between her and the gunfire. This was Daniel Park's world, the reality beneath the suits and boardrooms. Men died in alleys over money and loyalty and secrets. She could have stayed down, should have stayed down. Instead, when she saw one of the contractors flanking Jinsu's position, moving for a kill shot, her body moved on instinct. The knife left her hand, thrown with the precision of someone who'd learned to defend themselves in places where calling for help wasn't an option. It caught the contractor in the shoulder. Not fatal, but enough to spoil his aim, give Jinsu time to turn and put him down. The fight ended 30 seconds later. 2 contractors dead, 1 wounded and pinned. Daniel's men had the discipline that came from training and the stakes that came from loyalty to someone terrifying. Nia stayed behind the dumpster, her hands shaking now that adrenaline was fading. She'd save Daniel Park again. Not because she wanted to, but because watching Jinsu die felt wrong in a way she couldn't articulate. Daniel appeared above her, extending a hand. You're bleeding. She looked down. A graze across her arm, probably from debris. She hadn't felt it during the chaos. I'm fine. You're coming with us. The hell I am. Nia. Daniel's voice was patient in a way that suggested he'd argue all night if necessary. They found you because of me. They'll keep finding you until we eliminate whoever sent them. You can accept protection while we handle this, or you can run and they'll catch you when you're alone. Protection feels a lot like captivity. Call it what you want. You're not dying because you saved my life. Jinsu approached with zip ties for the surviving contractor. Boss, we need to move. Police response will be here in under 5 minutes. Safe house, Daniel ordered. The one in the hills. I'm not going. Daniel's expression went hard. You just wounded a man to save Jinsu. That makes you part of this whether you like it or not. They have your face, your name, your location. Running makes you an easier target. Staying with me makes you my responsibility. Choose. Nia looked at the bodies, the blood, the reality of what her choice in that salvage yard had unleashed. She'd saved a crime lord. Now she was standing in an alley surrounded by the consequences. Fine, she said. But this is temporary. Everything is temporary, Miss Carter. We just disagree on the timeline. They left before the sirens arrived, 4 SUVs disappearing into the night. Nia watched the warehouse district fade through tinted windows, watched her freedom dissolve into protection that felt like a cage. And in the vehicle behind them, the surviving contractor was already talking, trading information for leniency he'd never receive. The name he gave confirmed Daniel's suspicions and opened a wound he'd hoped would stay closed. Martha. The betrayal came from Martha. The hunt was about to get personal. The safe house was a fortress disguised as an estate. 20 acres in the hills, cameras on every approach, security that could repel a small army. Nia hated it on sight. Beautiful prison was still prison. "Your room's on the second floor," Jinsu said, all business now that the adrenaline had worn off. "Stay inside the main house. Guards patrol the grounds. For your safety, for my captivity." "Perspective," he almost smiled. "Boss wants to speak with you once he's handled the contractor interrogation. Might be a few hours." Nia was taken to a bedroom that cost more than her entire studio. Ensuite bathroom, walk-in closet, windows that overlooked gardens she wasn't allowed to walk in. She showered, changed into clothes someone had provided in exactly her size, which was either impressive surveillance or deeply creepy, and tried not to think about how thoroughly her life had been invaded. Around midnight, Daniel knocked. He looked exhausted, his face drawn in a way that spoke to pain he was ignoring. The interrogation had cost him, physically, and probably emotionally. "Can I come in?" She didn't answer, but she didn't refuse. He entered, settled carefully into the chair by the window, keeping distance between them. "The contractor talked," he said without preamble. "Marcus was working with someone inside my organization, someone who's been embedded for years, waiting for the right opportunity to make their move. Congratulations on your organizational dysfunction." The name he gave was Martha Chen. She's been my father's associate for 20 years. I've known her since I was 12. She was at my college graduation. At my mother's funeral. His voice was controlled, but something beneath it was fracturing. "And according to the contractor, she's been planning this coup for 3 years. Why are you telling me this?" Daniel met her eyes. "Because Martha's the one who signed off on making your mother disappear 12 years ago." The words hit like a fist. Nia's breath caught, her mind reeling back to fragmented memories, her mother's fear, the night everything fell apart, the men who'd come with promises of protection and delivered destruction instead. "You're lying." "I wish I was." Daniel pulled out a tablet, called up a file. "This is the original order. Martha's signature, authorizing payment to local police to ensure your mother couldn't testify, couldn't run. She facilitated everything." Nia stared at the document, at the signature that had ended her childhood. The room tilted, reality reorganizing itself into new, terrible shapes. "Why?" Her voice came out broken. "My mother was nobody. We had nothing. Why would your organization even—" "Your stepfather. He had connections, owed favors to my father's people. When your mother tried to leave, Martha saw it as a loyalty test. Helping your stepfather keep his family under control was a way of ensuring his continued cooperation." Daniel's expression was carefully neutral. "You and your mother were collateral damage in a transaction neither of you understood. And the scars?" Nia touched her forearm unconsciously. "How do they fit into your revelation? That night, when your mother tried to run, you tried to stop the men, didn't you? Fought them, even though you were 12 and they were armed." She had. She'd scratched, kicked, bitten, done everything a desperate child could do to save her mother. The men had held her down, carved 3 lines into her arm with a knife. "A lesson," they'd said. "A reminder of what happens when you interfere." "I was there," Daniel said quietly. "Not directly involved, but present. My father was teaching me the business, showing me how problems were solved. I saw them bring you out of the house, saw them restrain you. I was 20, and I did nothing." Nia's world sharpened into absolute clarity. Every assumption, every justification she'd made for saving Daniel Park in that salvage yard evaporated. He wasn't just connected to her trauma, he'd witnessed it. Had been complicit through his silence. "You watched," she said. "You watched them destroy my life and did nothing." "Yes. And now you expect what? Forgiveness? Understanding?" "No." Daniel's composure finally cracked. "I expect you to hate me. To tell me to go to hell. To regret saving my life in that salvage yard. But I need you to understand something. Martha orchestrated my attempted assassination because I've been systematically dismantling the parts of my father's empire that operated like they did that night. The trafficking, the brutality, the casual destruction of lives like yours." She saw it as weakness, as betrayal of what the park organization stood for. "So you're a benevolent crime lord now? How noble." "I'm trying to be better than what I inherited. It's not redemption. It doesn't erase what was done, but it's what I can control." Nia wanted to scream, to rage, to hurt him the way she'd been hurt. But beneath the anger was something more complicated. He'd been 20, barely older than she was now. Complicit, yes, but also trapped in an empire that groomed its heirs from childhood. It didn't excuse anything, but it complicated everything. The contractor said Martha's next move targets you. Daniel continued. She sees you as evidence I've gone soft, that I prioritize civilian lives over organizational efficiency. Killing you sends a message to anyone considering following my lead, so I'm a symbol now. Great. You're a target, and I'm offering proof. He pulled up another file on the tablet. Your birth certificate, except it's not yours. Nia Carter is a constructed identity, created 12 years ago when you entered the foster system. Your original name was sealed, hidden so thoroughly that even I couldn't find it without extensive investigation. What are you talking about? Someone altered your records. Someone with access to court systems, social services, law enforcement databases. Someone who wanted to ensure if anyone came looking for the girl from that night, they'd hit dead ends. Daniel turned the tablet toward her. Martha signed off on that too. She buried you, Nia. Made you disappear while keeping you visible. It's brilliant, really. You've been hiding in plain sight for 12 years, and you didn't even know it. Nia's hands shook as she took the tablet. The documents were there, her original birth certificate with a different name, her original social security number, records showing how Nia Carter had been constructed from pieces of other identities. Why would she hide me instead of just killing me? Leverage. Insurance. Martha's been planning her coup for years. Having evidence that the park organization destroyed a child's life, evidence that could be weaponized if my father ever turned on her, was valuable. Daniel's expression was grim. You were her failsafe. Her guarantee that if things went wrong, she could burn the entire empire down by exposing what was done to you. And now? Now she wants you dead because I've become the liability. If you live, if you testify, if you become public, it undermines everything she's trying to build. Nia's mind raced through implications. She wasn't just a survivor. She was evidence, a weapon, a secret that multiple powerful people wanted buried or exposed depending on their agenda. I want DNA confirmation, she said. Proof that this isn't another manipulation. Already arranged. Medical team arrives tomorrow. Completely independent. Results go directly to you. Daniel stood, moved toward the door. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For that night, for my silence, for every choice that led to you losing everything. I can't change the past, but I can ensure Martha doesn't get to shape the future. He left. Nia sat in the expensive room, surrounded by luxury that felt like mockery, and stared at documents that rewrote her entire understanding of her own identity. Tomorrow would bring DNA tests, confirmation, proof, but tonight, she had to sit with the knowledge that her life had been orchestrated by people playing games with stakes she'd never understood. And the man she'd saved, the man whose organization had destroyed her, was either telling the truth about wanting redemption, or he was the most sophisticated liar she'd ever encountered. Nia touched the scars on her arm. 3 lines. A signature. A mark that connected her past to Daniel Park's present in ways neither of them could escape. The war was coming, and she was standing in the crossfire, trying to decide who deserved her trust, and whether trust was even possible in a world built on lies. The attack came at 3 a.m. when human vigilance was weakest. Nia woke to silence, wrong silence, the kind that meant something had stopped that shouldn't have. The hum of climate control, the subtle electronic buzz of security systems, all gone. She was out of bed before her conscious mind caught up, grabbing clothes, her go-bag, the knife she'd insisted on keeping. Training from years of sleeping in places that weren't safe kicked in hard. The hallway was dark. Not just lights out dark, but completely black. The kind of darkness that came from severed power and jammed backups. Nia, Daniel's voice came from the direction of his room, controlled but urgent. With me, now. She moved toward the sound, found him by touch. He pressed something into her hands, a flashlight, compact and military grade. Safe rooms in the basement, he said quietly. Jinsu's team should have secured it, but the fact that power's out means they breached the perimeter. We move fast, stay quiet. They cut the power. They know the layout. This is inside information. I know. His voice was grim. Martha has floor plans, security protocols, everything. This safe house was supposed to be secret. The leak goes deeper than I thought. They moved through darkness, Daniel navigating from memory. Nia followed, her mind cataloging exit points, defensive positions, anything useful if things went bad. They made it to the stairs before they heard it. Footsteps below, ascending, professional, Coordinated. Back, Daniel whispered. They retreated up instead, toward the third floor. The estate had multiple staircases, old architecture that valued escape routes. If they could reach the servants' access, glass shattered below. Multiple entry points. These weren't contractors. This was a tactical team. The roof, Nia said. Old buildings like this always have roof access. Maintenance hatches, chimneys, something. Daniel nodded, changed direction. They found the access panel in a third-floor closet, the kind of detail that only mattered during fires or, apparently, when your safe house became a kill box. The roof was exposed, dangerous. 20-foot drop to the gardens on one side, 40 to the driveway on another. But it put them above the attackers, gave them seconds to think. Jinsu? Daniel tried his phone. No signal. Jammed, like everything else. They've got military-grade equipment. This isn't just Martha's resources. Someone with serious money is backing this. Below, methodical sounds. Doors being kicked, rooms searched. They had maybe 3 minutes before someone checked the roof access. The gardens, Nia said. There's got to be a service entrance. Something for grounds crew. 40 yards across open ground. We'll be exposed. Better than trapped. They didn't have time to debate. Daniel moved first, his injuries slowing him but not stopping him. Nia followed, her dancer's balance keeping her steady on the pitched roof tiles. That's when the first shot came. It wasn't aimed to kill. The bullet struck tiles 3 feet to Nia's left. Warning shot. They wanted them alive, at least temporarily. Move! Daniel grabbed her hand, pulled her into a sprint across the roof peak. More shots, closer now. Someone below had them in sight, was herding them toward the edge. The drop to the gardens was survivable but painful. The drop to the driveway was potential death. Nia made a choice. She yanked Daniel sideways, toward the decorative chimney, put brick between them and the shooter. It bought them seconds. The drain pipe, she said, spotting the old cast iron running down the building's side. It might hold. That's a 30-foot climb down ancient infrastructure. You have a better plan? He didn't. They went over the edge, Nia first because she weighed less, and if the pipe failed, at least Daniel might not fall. The metal groaned but held. She descended fast, the skills from years of climbing fire escapes and less than legal entry points coming back. Daniel followed, slower, his injuries protesting. 15 feet down, the pipe bracket pulled free from the wall. Nia caught him as he fell, her body absorbing the impact against the wall. They tumbled the last 8 feet into hedge bushes that broke their fall and left them both bleeding from thorns and scrapes. Can you run? She asked. Doesn't matter if I can't. They ran. The grounds were a maze in darkness, but Nia's eyes had adjusted. She led, taking paths that stuck to shadows, using landscape features for cover. Behind them, shouts. The tactical team was regrouping, reorienting. They made it to the service gate locked, but Nia had picked worse. 20 seconds with a hairpin, and they were through, into the access road that wound down the hill. That's when headlights blazed from both directions. Boxed in. Again, Martha's people had thought this through. Off-road, Daniel said. The forest. They crashed through underbrush, branches tearing at clothes and skin. The pursuit followed, but vehicles couldn't navigate where they were going. It bought them distance, bought them time. Nia's lungs burned. Her legs screamed. But she'd run from worse, and this time she wasn't alone. They made it half a mile before Daniel collapsed. Keep going, he gasped. Blood soaked, his shirt stitches had torn, wounds reopened. Not happening. Nia, you can. Shut up. She pulled him into a depression in the ground, hidden by fallen logs and overgrowth. We wait. They're tracking movement, sound. We go still, we disappear. It was a gamble. The tactical team had equipment, training. But they were hunting in unfamiliar forest, and Nia had learned to become invisible in worse conditions. They waited. The searchers passed within 20 feet, their flashlights cutting through trees. But they didn't stop, didn't see. They were hunting rabbits who ran, not prey that went to ground. 20 minutes later, the search moved on, focused deeper in the forest. We need to move, Nia whispered. But not the way they expect. She led them parallel to the search grid, then back toward the estate, the last direction Martha's people would anticipate. They circled wide, found a groundskeeper's shed on the property's edge. Inside, tools and landscaping equipment, and a radio that might still work if its frequency wasn't jammed. It wasn't. Jinsu's voice came through, strained but alive. Boss? Where are you? Groundskeeper shed, northwest corner. Status? Pinned down in the garage. Lost 3 men. These aren't contractors, this is a professional hit squad. Can you reach us? Negative. We're in a holding pattern until backup arrives. How long? 20 minutes. Maybe 30. They didn't have 30 minutes. Daniel was bleeding badly, shock setting in, and the tactical team would eventually complete their forest sweep and return to search the grounds more thoroughly. Nia looked at the tools, the equipment, the random detritus of property maintenance. An idea formed risky, stupid, the kind of thing that only worked in desperation. The propane tanks, she said, for the landscaping equipment. How many? 3, maybe 4. Why? Because we're going to make them think the whole estate is about to explode. It took 15 minutes to rig. Propane tanks dragged to strategic points, valves opened, timers set using modified irrigation controllers. It wouldn't actually destroy the building, the setup was too crude, but it would look like it might, which was enough. They triggered the first timer and ran. The explosion wasn't massive, but it was loud, visible, and exactly the kind of thing that made tactical teams reassess risk tolerance. Fire bloomed in the gardens, spreading to decorative plantings that had been drought dry for weeks. Chaos. The hit squad had to choose: continue hunting or prevent the entire operation from becoming a visible disaster that would draw emergency response. They chose containment. Nia and Daniel used the distraction to reach the garage, where Jinsu's remaining men were holding position. Medical, Nia said. Now. Jinsu took one look at Daniel and started barking orders. First aid, pressure bandages, the kind of field medicine that kept people alive until real help arrived. Backup came 10 minutes later, Park Syndicate reinforcements who'd been scrambled the moment the estate went dark. The tactical team withdrew rather than face a prolonged engagement, but they left something behind. One of Jinsu's men found him in the garden, wounded but alive, pinned under debris from Nia's improvised explosion. A tactical team member, separated from his squad, they brought him to the garage. Daniel, bandaged and pumped full of painkillers, stood over him with an expression that promised terrible things. Who sent you? The man stayed silent. Jinsu, Daniel said quietly. Make him talk. Wait. Nia stepped forward. Let me. She knelt beside the wounded man, met his eyes. You don't know me, but I know how this goes. They'll torture you, and you'll eventually break, and you'll tell them everything. Or you can tell me now, and I'll make sure your death is fast instead of prolonged. You don't have it in you. Nia pulled out her knife, the same one she'd carried since that night in the warehouse. I saved Daniel Park's life twice now. You think I did that because I'm soft? Tell me who's paying you, or find out exactly how hard I can be. Something in her voice convinced him. Or maybe it was her eyes, which held a certainty that came from surviving things he couldn't imagine. Martha Chen, he gasped. But she's not running it. There's someone above her, someone who's been funding the whole operation. Name? I don't know. We only got code names. But the last order came with a specific message. Ask Martha about the girl. She's the key to everything. He died 3 minutes later. Blood loss and internal injuries finishing what Nia's explosion had started. Daniel looked at her across the body. He called you the key. I don't know what that means. Neither do I. But we're going to find out. Daniel's expression was grim. Because this isn't about territory or money anymore. This is personal in ways we're just starting to understand. As dawn broke over the smoking ruins of the safe house, Nia realized the war had shifted. She wasn't collateral damage anymore. She was the objective. The interrogation of Martha Chen happened in a warehouse that officially didn't exist. Nia watched from behind one-way glass as Daniel faced the woman who'd orchestrated everything. His attempted murder, the destruction of Nia's life, 12 years of carefully maintained lies. Martha looked older than her photos suggested, elegant even in restraints, her expression defiant. You always were too soft, she told Daniel. Your father would be ashamed. My father built an empire on fear and exploitation. I'm building something different. You're building nothing. You're dismantling everything we worked for. And for what? A misguided sense of morality? Martha's laugh was bitter. The girl in that observation room, do you even know what she represents? Nia's hands clenched. Through the speaker, she heard Daniel's response. She represents every choice I'm trying to move past. Every decision this organization made that prioritized power over humanity. She represents blood, Martha snapped. Your father's blood. Did you really think I altered her records? Buried her identity? Kept her alive all these years out of sentiment? The room went still. What are you talking about? Daniel's voice was dangerously quiet. Your father had an affair, 26 years ago, before you were born. A woman named Sarah, Naya's mother. He wanted to end it cleanly when your mother got pregnant, but Sarah wouldn't disappear quietly. So he paid her off, set her up with a man who'd keep her under control. Everything was fine until Sarah decided 12 years later that she wanted out. Nia couldn't breathe. The words were reshaping her entire world. I handled it, Martha continued. Made sure Sarah couldn't talk, couldn't disrupt your family. But I kept the girl alive because she was leverage, proof of your father's indiscretion. Insurance against him ever turning on me. You're lying. But Daniel's voice lacked certainty. DNA doesn't lie. Run the tests. You'll find out exactly why that girl looks so much like your mother did at that age. Jinsu entered the observation room where Nia stood frozen. The DNA results came back an hour ago, he said quietly. Boss wanted to wait until we had Martha in custody before telling you. But given what she just said, tell me, you and Daniel Park share a father. You're half-siblings. The room tilted. Nia grabbed the wall for support as every interaction, every assumption, every complicated feeling she'd had about Daniel recategorized itself into something new and impossible. The man she'd saved wasn't just connected to her trauma. He was family. The empire that had destroyed her mother had been built by her father. I need air, she managed. She made it outside before the tears came. Angry tears, frustrated tears, the kind that came from a lifetime of lies revealing themselves in the worst possible way. Daniel found her 20 minutes later. You knew, she said. When the DNA results came back, you knew. I suspected after seeing your face clearly. The resemblance to my mother was too strong. But I needed confirmation before. He stopped. I'm sorry. I should have told you immediately. Another Park family secret. How traditional. Nia. Don't. She turned on him. You don't get to call me that like we're family. We're not family. We're survivors of the same man's selfishness and the same organization's brutality. That's not kinship. That's shared trauma. You're right. Daniel kept his distance, respected her space. But it also means Martha's plan was even more twisted than we thought. She wasn't just protecting herself. She was creating the perfect weapon against my father. Against me. If this ever became public, the great Park family revealed as hypocrites, the crime lord who preached loyalty while abandoning his own daughter. Nia's laugh was harsh. It's almost poetic. What do you want? Daniel asked. Truly, not what I think you should want, not what the situation demands. What do you need? Nia considered. Her whole life had been defined by what was done to her, by choices other people made. Her mother's choices, her father's choices, Martha's choices. Even saving Daniel had been a choice made in a moment without full information. I want autonomy, she said finally. I want my studio back, my life back, my identity, my real identity, whatever that is on my terms. No Park family strings, no obligations, no leverage. Done. I want Martha prosecuted, properly, not disappeared into whatever justice system the syndicate operates, but actual legal consequences. That's harder. The evidence trail implicates my family, which means I don't care what it costs you. She destroyed my mother. She's tried to kill us both. She gets prosecuted. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. It'll destroy the Park family's reputation, expose operations we've tried to legitimize. My father will likely face charges. The organization might not survive. Good. Burn it down. All right. The simplicity of his agreement startled her. Just like that? You're giving me permission to dismantle everything my father built, everything I've spent years trying to reform from the inside. I've wanted to burn it down for a long time. I just needed a reason strong enough to justify the cost. He met her eyes. You're that reason. Over the next 3 months, the Park empire crumbled in slow motion. Martha Chen was arrested on conspiracy charges. The evidence Nia provided testimony about her mother, documentation Martha had kept as insurance, opened investigations into decades of criminal activity. Daniel's father was extradited from Seoul. The legal battles would take years, but the outcome was inevitable. The Park syndicate fragmented. Some lieutenants tried to seize power, were quietly eliminated or arrested. Others fled. A few, the ones Daniel had been cultivating, stayed to help build something different: legitimate businesses, community investment, the kind of empire that didn't leave bodies in alleys. Jinsu became Daniel's partner in this reconstruction, keeping the useful parts while excising the cancerous tissue. And Nia got her studio back. Not through Park family money, she'd refused that absolutely, but through legal compensation from frozen syndicate assets, restitution for what had been done to her mother. To her, it was still blood money in a sense, but it was hers by right, not by charity. She expanded, hired teachers, offered scholarships to kids from the same system that had failed her, built something that mattered. Daniel visited sometimes, always respectful of boundaries, never assuming connection. They were working towards something not family in the traditional sense, but perhaps something more honest. Survivors building trust from wreckage. The message arrived on a Tuesday. Nia found it slipped under her studio door. Unmarked envelope, single piece of paper. The war isn't over. Martha was a pawn. The real game begins when you realize who's been playing both sides. A friend. She called Daniel immediately. I got one too, he said. Different wording, same message. Martha said there was someone above her. Someone funding everything. I thought we'd eliminated the threat. Apparently we eliminated a symptom. Nia looked at the message again, her mind already cataloging threats, calculating risks. What do we do? We? Daniel's tone held something like hope. We're in this together now. Like it or not, we're the target someone still wants eliminated. She paused. Besides, you're my half-brother. Annoying, complicated, comes with a criminal empire as baggage, but still family. I thought we weren't family, just shared trauma. I'm allowed to change my mind. Nia's grip tightened on the paper. So we do what we're both good at. We survive. We find whoever's still playing games with our lives. And we end this permanently. Together? Together. As Nia locked up the studio that night, she caught her reflection in the cracked mirror. The scars on her arm were still visible. Still part of her story. But they weren't the whole story anymore. She was Nia Carter, daughter of Sarah, half-sister to Daniel Park, survivor of an empire that had tried to erase her. She owned a dance studio. She saved lives. She made choices on her own terms. And somewhere out there, someone was still moving pieces on a board she just realized was bigger than she'd understood. The message in her pocket felt like a beginning, not an ending. The war wasn't over, but this time, she wasn't fighting alone. But here's the real question. Was Martha truly the mastermind? Or is someone even more dangerous still hiding in the shadows? And should Nia ever trust Daniel after everything his family did, even if he's trying to change? Drop your opinion in the comments. Team Nia, burn it all down. Or Team Daniel, rebuild it right?